Hey guys, what's going on? It's Clever Techie, and in this video we're going to be continuing covering top 100 PHP functions from 41 to 50 that you see highlighted here. And let's go ahead and get started with file put contents. Alright, so file put contents is used to write the data to the file. It returns an integer, which is going to be the number of characters that are inside the text file after we write the data to it. And it accepts two parameters. The first one is the file name, and the second one is the data to write to the file. It also accepts optional arguments, which can be either of these three constants here, and we're gonna cover these two. Alright, let me give you an example of how this works. So let's suppose we have some content that we want to write to the file. It can be any text that you like. Then we can use file put contents, and then we can specify the name of the file, which is the first parameter, and then the content as the second parameter. And that's how easy it is to create the file and write the content to it. So the location of this PHP script is here, so the file is going to appear in this folder after we run the script. So I'm gonna go ahead and run this, and now we have a file named cheatcode.txt, and if we open it, it is a good day to die. There's our content. Okay, so we can also use those flags like file append to append the data to the file. So let me show you how that works. So for example, if we have some more content explaining what that text is, which is a Warcraft 2 cheat code, so we can just say more, which is going to be more content to add to the existing content, and we can use the function again, file put contents. The file name is still the same, cheatcode.txt. Then we can specify the content, which is more, and then use file append to append the content to the existing content of the file. Alright, let's go ahead and see what happens when we run this. Open the file, and now we have the appended content. We can also use the constant named logx, and this just prevents other users to write the content to the file at the same time. So we can use the OR operator, which is a pipe here, and then just say logx. So when writing the content to the file, we can use this constant to prevent other users from writing the content at the same time. So that's what that does. And let me also show you another way to append the content. So we can also do this. So suppose we have some suppose we wanted to get the current content from our existing file, and for that we can use a function called file get contents, and then just specify the name of the file, and then we can just print it out, and that's gonna get the whatever content that's inside the file and print it to the screen. So there it is, we're getting the content using the file get contents function. So the other way to append is we can say current equals dot equals. So this is a concatenate string operator in PHP, and then we can just add on more text to the current content. Just like that. And so now if you print the content, current, we got this content appended, and from here we can just use file put contents to write the content back to the file. So we can say file put contents, the name of the file, which is cheatcode.txt, and current. So now if we open a file, we get all that text. It is a good day to die, Warcraft 2 cheat code, and invincible to the enemy attacks, which is another way that we use to append the content to the file. So there's just two different ways of appending the content. Alrighty, that's file put contents. Let's move on to the next one, which is rtrim. So this function works this almost the same as the trim function that we covered earlier, but this one only trims the data from the right side of the file instead of both sides. So hence the name rtrim. So strip whitespace or other characters from the end of the string. And just like in trim, we can provide a character mask specifying what kind of characters we want to remove. And it takes one parameter as a string, and it also returns a string. So these are the default characters that is going to strip if we don't specify the character mask. Alright, let me give you an example here. String. And I'm going to include a space here at the end of the string. I'm going to use a function called var_dump to output the string. And then we're going to trim it. Trimmed equals rtrim string var_dump string trimmed. Alright, let's see what that does. So this is just gonna remove this white space at the end of the string. So as you can see here, var_dump is 15 characters long, and there's a space at the end of the string, and then we use the rtrim function and remove the space. So that's basically how it works. And then we can also specify the character mask. So let's go ahead and do that. So trim equals rtrim, and then I'm gonna use the trimmed version of the string and say we wanted to remove the 1 from the end of the string, so we can just do that here. And then var_dump trim, and all that's gonna do is remove the 1 from the end of the string. And as you can see, it's still got the space because it removes the 1, but then the space is remaining. So if we wanted to remove the space, we can do this. And now that space is removed and we have only 10 characters left. Alright, so that's how that works. Let's move on to the next one, which is array popped. Alright, so that one works in the same exact way as array shift, but instead of removing the first value or first key of the array, it removes the last one. So it works exactly the same, resetting the array keys and returning the value that we're popping from the array. So array pop takes in the array as a parameter and returns a mixed data or value as a return value. Alright, let me give you an example here. So, suppose we have a array of cards, spades, hearts, clubs, and diamonds. So just a basic associative array. So I'm gonna just print it here, and then I'm gonna say card equals array pop cards. So what that's gonna do is gonna remove diamonds from this array, reset the keys, and then store diamonds inside the card variable, because that's what array pop returns. So we can just print out the array again to see what's going on, and then echo card. Okay, so now we have the original array. Spades, hearts, clubs, diamonds. We used array pop, pops the diamonds off the end of the array, and now we have just spades, hearts, clubs without the diamonds, and the array keys have been reset. and the card is stored inside of our variable, and then we print it out. So just the same as the array shift, and instead of removing the first key, it removes the last one. So that's it. Alright, next one is Unlink. So this one just deletes the file. That's all it does. Let's look it up in PHP manual real fast. So it deletes a file, returns boolean on success or false, and accepts string as a file name and resource as context for the optional parameter. Alrighty, so let's go ahead and create the file. Let's say some random content. I can spell that word. And then we can use the file put contents function to create a new file. Let's name it one.txt and put the content inside of the file. Refresh, and now we have created this file here. And so we're just gonna use unlink and simply provide the name of the file, and then we can watch it being deleted live right there. So if I do this and I refresh the page, this file should now disappear. And bam, it disappears. So that's unlink. So that's how unlink works. Let's move on to the next function, which is BaseName. So BaseName is a really good way to extract just the name of the file, and optionally also remove this the suffix like JPEG, GIF, TXT, etc., without having to use any regular expressions or preg replace or replace text or anything like that. So let's give you an example here. So I'm just gonna copy this file path here and say directory equals that file path, and I'm gonna provide the name of the file, which is cheatcode.txt that we've created earlier. And now if we just wanted to extract the name of the file, which is cheatcode.txt, instead of using any kind of regular expressions or replace the text, we can just say BaseName directory, and that will extract just the file name, cheatcode.txt. Bam. That's how convenient that is. And if we also wanted to remove the suffix, we can just do that here, .txt, and that removes the extension of the file. So I used to use regular expressions and str replace until I learned about this function, which is really easy and convenient way to extract the file names. So it's a pretty useful function. Alright, let's move on to the next one, which is real path. Alright, so since I'm using Windows, I'm only going to be able to show the functionality of this function on Windows. So just using PHP example here, on Windows, real path will change Unix style paths to Windows style. So using their example here, if we have a Unix style path and we want to convert it to Windows style, we can use real path. And that will convert Windows /system32, which is C Windows System 32. So that's what the real path is used for. Alright, let's move on to the next function, which is CallUserFunc. Okay, so this function, let's look it up in PHP manual. CallUserFunc. So it calls the callback given by the first parameter, and it's going to call the function that we provide here as a callable function, and then along with the parameters that we specify as optional values. Okay, so let's suppose we have a function here named favorite game, and this function can accept two parameters, the game and the type of the game. And then all it does is just gonna print out one single line of text, and it's gonna say, I love to play game, it's my favorite type of game. Okay, so we can just use CallUserFunc and then specify the name of the function as a string, which is favorite game. So that's what's meant by the callable function. We provide the function name in a string, and then we can also specify the parameters. So we can say Witcher 3, and the platform could be Xbox 360 or PC or whatever. So now let's see what happens. I love to play Witcher 3. It's my favorite Xbox 360 game. Alright, so that's how that function works. And so what's cool about this is we can also set the function name as a variable. So we can say function name equals favorite game, and then we can just provide this as a variable right there, function name, and that will do exactly the same thing. So as long as this parameter is a string and it matches our function name, it's going to work. Alright, so another way that we can use this function is to call a method inside the class. So let's go ahead and create a class. I'm gonna name it cards. And let's suppose we have a static function inside this class called pickCard. And all it's gonna do is pick a random cards from the array. King, Queen, Jack, Ace. Alright, that's enough. And so we can say echo cards, and then I'm gonna use the array rand function to pick the random value from the array, and cards. So that's just gonna pick the random value and output it to the screen. There's two ways to call this function using CallUserFunc. So one of them is CallUserFunc, and then we can say array cards, which is the name of the class, and for the second parameter we specify the name of the function, pickCard. So that's gonna use the class cards, and it's gonna call the function. Because it's static, we're able to call it as a second parameter just like that. So let's see what happens. And now we have Jack, King, and it's calling a function and printing out the random parameter. And another way to call this static function using CallUserFunc is like this: cards, colon, pick card. And that will do exactly the same thing, as you can see there. Alright, so that's how that function works. Let's move on to the next one, which is CallUserFunc Array. So this function works in exactly the same way as CallUserFunc, but instead of parameters, you can specify the array of parameters. And for that, let me just create a new function here and show you an example of how that works. So favorite, I'm gonna create a favorite movie, and it's gonna accept three parameters: movie, type, and year. And then we're just gonna print out a random or a single line of text. I'll have to watch movie. It's my favorite type movie, which came out in year. So just to demonstrate that we can pass parameters to the function and then output them to the screen, as basic as it gets. So let's also go ahead and create the variable, and which is gonna hold our function name, favorite movie, And then for the parameters, we're gonna create the array this time. So 3 parameters. Gonna say my favorite movie, movie type, and the year where it came out, which is 1995. So then we can just use CallUserFunc Array, provide the function name. Function name. And then the array, which is the parameters. Bam, just like that. I love to watch Braveheart. It's my favorite drama movie, which came out in 1995. So you can see how we created the array instead of passing the parameters, and does exactly the same thing as the CallUserFunc, but with an array. So that's why it's called CallUserFunc Array. Alright, let's move on to the next one, which is fopen. Okay, so opens file or URL, returns a resource. This is what's important to understand, is that it's going to be a resource and not the actual content of the file that can be used to modify the file or write to the file, append to the file, etc, etc, etc. So it takes on a string as a file name, and then the mode, which can be any of these parameters here, used for reading, writing, appending, etc, etc, etc. So let's let me give you an example of how that works. So let's open up a file that we created earlier called cheat code here. So this is the content of the file, and we're gonna go ahead and open up that file as a resource. So we're gonna say resource equals fopen, and then the name of that directory and the file. And then I'm gonna use A for mode, which means to append to the file. And if you look it up here, opens for writing only, place a file pointer at the end of the file, and if the file does not exist, attempt to create it. So we're gonna write additional content to the end of the file with that mode. So for now, let me just show you what the resource looks like. If we just output the resource here, so you can see that it's a resource 8 of type stream. So it's just a resource that we're able to modify further and work with it. And you can look it up at php.manual what the resource actually means. So we can use the function called fwrite to write additional content to the file by specifying our resource and then the additional content that we want to write to the file. And since we used A, which is going to put the file pointer at the end of the file, this text will be written at the end of the file. Alright, let me go ahead and run this and open the file, and voila, we now have every little thing she does at the end of the file. Alright, so that's how that works, and it's a good idea to also close the resource after opening it. So for that we use a function called fclose resource, and this is going to free up the resources and reset the file pointer, so we can use fopen with another mode if we wanted to overwrite the file, read the file, or do whatever. So it's a really good idea to use the fclose after fopening it. Alright, so that's fopen, and the last function is MicroTime. So MicroTime is a really good function to keep track of time in very, very precise timing in microseconds. So return current Unix timestamp with microseconds. Okay, so let me show you an example here. So time start equals MicroTime true, and so setting this optional variable as true is going to return a float number instead of a string. So we can use this to keep track of the timing. So if we use the function called uSleep, which takes in timing in microseconds, and every 1 second equals 1 million microseconds. So if we wanted to sleep for 2 seconds, we would enter 2 million here. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So that's equals to 2 seconds. Okay, so we started the timer and we waited for 2 seconds, and now we can say time end equals MicroTime, which is going to be the time after 2 seconds, and we can say time elapsed time end minus time start. And what is that going to give us? That's going to give us the time elapsed, which is 2 seconds. So it's a really good way to keep track of the timing if we have, if we wanted to create a timer. And did nothing in 2 seconds. So that's how MicroTime works. Alright guys, that's it for these 10 functions. In the next video, we're going to be continuing covering top 100 PHP functions from 51 to 60. And if you like this video, please like, share, and subscribe. And I'll see you next time. Clever Techie out.